Blind spots are weaknesses that can absolutely kill your creative products, and in the field of board game design, there are a lot of blind spots. I'm Mondo, I'm the senior developer of hobby games at the Op, and I'm here to help you with your board game design. Of all the mistakes that a board game designer can make, I think there is one in particular that can do the most damage to the progress of your game design, and that is selective hearing. So let's talk about it. An easy definition of selective hearing is when you have multiple voices that you can pay attention to and you choose to listen to one over another. This happens all the time in our daily life, but when it sneaks into our reception of feedback and conversations around our game designs, it can do a lot of irreversible damage. When I started designing games, I primarily play tested my game with friends and family members who were not gamers, but were very impressed with the fact that I had designed a board game. They had never heard of anyone doing that and were overwhelmingly positive with the feedback that they gave me. That positivity was not a reflection of the quality of the game design itself, but rather their reaction to the fact that I had designed a game. But I internalized that positive feedback and convinced myself that my game was really, really good. Now, eventually I began to playtest my game with more experienced gamers and then other designers and eventually even publishers, and the nature of the feedback that I was receiving started to shift. People that had a better understanding of quality game design principles and best practices started giving me much more targeted critical feedback than I had ever received. Initially, I was hesitant to this criticism because so many people that had played my game had wonderful things to say about it, and I had convinced myself that the game was really good. In my mind, this new feedback and criticism was misguided or came from a place of misunderstanding. Like the folks that were giving it to me didn't quite get what I was trying to do, or just had a bad luck experience, or made poor decisions in the gameplay that affected their overall reaction. This game was very dear to me, and the praise that I had received had solidified it in my mind as something that I was very proud of, and even that afforded me a certain degree of accomplishment and notoriety as a person who designed games. I was very much guilty of this selective hearing, as the temptation was to filter out the criticism and to maintain my over-validated view of my own game. To have that challenge was hard to hear. It damaged my ego and presented me with a choice. Should I ignore this critical feedback and trust the initial praise that I received was a more accurate reflection of the quality of the game experience? Or should I embrace it and internalize it and see if I could use it to improve on the design? Thankfully, I was able to choose the latter and accepted the feedback of experienced playtesters as valid and worth my time and effort. It was a hard pill to swallow, and one that unfortunately many new designers are not able to do. Our designs are precious to us. The choices that we make, the clever design directions that we go in, and the positive reactions we get from our players are very satisfying and validating. But when we choose to ignore criticism and only focus on the type of feedback that we want to hear, the progress and growth of our game design is stunted as the issues inherent in the design, its shortcomings and failure to deliver, or its complexity or imbalance all stay as they are. If we only hear what we want to hear, our games don't get better and our own progress as designers stalls. I want to pause here and remind you to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I appreciate the interaction and it's really helpful in supporting me, so thanks. But it's more than just egocentrism that can drive this selective hearing. Oftentimes designers are motivated by their own creative direction or their intention of creative expression. They build games to be true to that conviction of self-expression or that belief in themselves as creative vessels. And while I would never condemn this approach or this mentality, it can very much contribute to this blind spot that we're talking about. The reality is that if your goal for your game is to have it either published or self-published and introduced into the market and to experience some degree of financial retail success, it's going to take more than one person's creative conviction to make that happen. The market and the board game audience are what they are. They want what they want, and all of these things are mostly predictable. The best way that you can reach that audience is by creating a game that meets their expectations. And the best way to meet their expectations is by listening to the feedback that you get from people that have done it before. When we devote ourselves to a creative message or designate our games as vessels of our own creative expression as their primary function, we can very easily miss the audience who isn't attuned to what we're trying to create. That's not to say there isn't room for creativity or innovation or thinking outside the box, because I think those things are very important. But equally important is accessibility that comes with adherence to certain game design norms and expectations. I'm intentionally leaving this ambiguous because it can be interpreted in a lot of ways, but I just want to be clear that my point here is that feedback that you get from individuals who have done this before is valuable and should be heard and listened to when applicable. People in this industry know what they're talking about, and if you as a new designer reject their feedback, you're setting yourself up for failure. I know this is kind of aggressive and maybe too heavy, but it's a mistake that I've made myself and I've seen many people throughout experience levels make in this hobby. So listen to the feedback that you receive, take it with a grain of salt when necessary, but stay on the lookout for this tendency of selective hearing. Tell me in the comments if you agree or you think I'm totally off base, or if you have any questions. Thanks for watching and good luck.